Welcome to the Perception Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about knowing and doing. Now, you can know and do in one of four ways. You can know and do in one of four ways. One is either you're doing to the point you know, or you're knowing and doing less, or you are knowing more and doing more, or you're doing more and knowing less. I repeat, there are one of four ways to know and do. It's either you do to the point you know, or you're knowing and doing less, or you're knowing more and doing more, or you're doing more and knowing less. Now let's start by do to the point of what you know. The first one is doing to the point of what you know. Before I started this podcast, I'm a voracious reader. I've been reading for close to 17 years, and I felt I know a lot of things and I could talk about anything. But I never knew it was quite different when you're trying to do a recording for people, especially for a podcast, based on the episode and based on what your podcast is all about. I never knew it was very different. I thought it's just like talking to everybody, making your point, because you've read a lot on different topics. You can find it very easy to actually discuss anything. But I got to realize that when I started this podcast, it was a whole lot different. I was doing to the point that I know. I never knew there was much more to it, because in the process of recording, I started realizing that I was becoming too conscious, and I started having some sort of hiccups or hesitation in terms of how I was making my point for the podcast or talking about a particular issue. That made me realize that I was doing to the point I knew. I was doing to the point that I know. I was just knowing to the point that I was doing, or I was doing to the point that I knew. I never knew it entailed much more. I never knew that with consistency over time, I started improving and I started developing. So what have I been trying to say? I am trying to say you can do to the point at which you know. Your knowing is the point to which you're doing. What you do is to the point at which you know. Now, I related it to this podcast. Now, I want to refer to as knowing more and doing less. The second point is knowing more and doing less. Actually, I majored in history and international relations. In college, I had two majors as a combined honor. So I had history as a major, international relations as a major. So it was a combined honor for me. And when the American invasion of Afghanistan in 2001 was taking place, I started having the notion of there's likely to be terrorists in my home country, Nigeria. This is what I predicted far back 2001, that there's likely to be a terrorist organization in Nigeria. And between 2005 to 2010, or 2008 to 2010, I think we had the emergence of what I call Boko Haram in Nigeria. And I started reading extensively on terrorism. I read a book by Michael Weiss on terrorism. I read a whole lot of books on terrorism. Michael Weiss on Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State. I read extensively. And I read David Gallo, Counterinsurgency Warfare, because these were the leading books on terrorism. I became so precocious on the topic that I was able to discuss at length with anybody and everybody. I started doing my own research. I started Googling. I started even reading the ideology of the Islamic State, because of the Boko Haram insurgency going on at that point in time. It's still going on, which is still going on till this day in Nigeria. I decided that, okay, I'm very vast in this issue. But I knew more. But was I doing more? I was not doing more, because I was very comfortable discussing terrorism with people within the vicinity, but I was not really comfortable trying to discuss it out with the wider audience. I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to leave my comfort zone. I just felt I knew more, and I was doing, but I was not doing more. Rather, I knew more and I was doing less because I felt discussing it with people within my vicinity was okay for me. I didn't want to go further than that. It was also the case of the government. I don't want to be picked up by the government. I don't want the intelligence to pick me up, and all that kind of stuff because of the way the country is. So I just decided, look, I knew more, but I was doing less. Because if I wanted to do more, I'd have actually tried to reach out to people in the media industry, radio, TV, newsprint, but I failed to do that because I was not doing more. I knew more because I've read extensively, but I was doing less. So that's what I'm talking about. So I've been talking about knowing and doing. The first one I'm talking about doing to the point at which you know, or doing to the point to which you know. And secondly, I talked about knowing more and doing less. Now, the third one is knowing more and doing more. Now, when I started this podcast, let me use this podcast. When I started initially, I felt because I've read so much and I was a voracious leader, I can actually talk on any of the topics. But as time goes on, I realized there was much more to it. I had to act as if I was talking to someone just to build my confidence over time because I was just standing up. I was having some hiccups and hesitation in the way I was presenting, the way I did my intro, the way I was building my points, the way I was making my points to the point I concluded. But over time, I've improved and I'm still improving because I wanted to know more and I wanted to do more. So I was listening to other podcasts like Guy Raz. I listened to Guy Raz, How I Built This. I listened to Tim Ferriss. I listened to the Jordan Harbinger Show. These are guys who are seasoned. These are guys who are top-notch in the podcast industry. I can't be like them, but what I can do is to learn how to go about their interest, especially Jordan Harbinger, the way he asks questions. I was really intrigued. I was really moved. So I started looking at the way they were asking questions, the way they were presenting their intros, the way they were making their points. And I said, okay, this is something I could actually learn from these guys. And I said, but I have to do it my own way. I have to look into my experience and gather inspiration, what inspired me and the inspiration I gathered, and how I do it my own way based on my own experience and how inspired all the inspiration. How I got my inspiration and the experience I have and what I've come to know and understand about life as regard my own philosophy and also studying the philosophy of others is how I started presenting the Perception Podcast, because I wanted to know more and I wanted to do more. Because I wanted to know more and I wanted to do more. Because I had to listen to other podcasts. I listened to How I Built This by Guy Raz. I listened to the Jordan Harbinger Show. And I listened to Tim Ferriss podcast with Tim Ferriss. Because I had to listen to them and see how they were presenting it and how I could learn and how I could do it in my own unique way based on how I get my inspiration and based on what I've experienced and based on what I've come to know and based on what I understand about life. It's a different ballgame entirely. Now, I've talked about doing to the point you know, knowing more and doing less, and knowing more and doing more. Now, I want to talk about the last one. The last one is doing more and knowing less. Some of us, we do more, but we know less. We might have a way of doing something. We might be doing something in a particular way, but we know less. There was this guy I met at one point in time in my life. I saw him as a mentor. And I looked up to him in that particular aspect of what he was doing. I was doing more, but I knew less because I lacked experience. So in the process of getting to know him and allowing him to mentor me, I was the mentee and I was the mentee and he was the mentor. So, In that process, I was learning a lot from him because I liked the way he was living his life. I liked his people skills, his social skills, and I really wanted to learn. I was doing so much to learn. I was doing much, but I knew less. But I wanted to have such people skills like him and emotional intelligence the way he did, but I never had it. But I took him as my mentor, and I became the mentee. So over time, I started developing those people skills and social skills. Because I don't have the experience, I was doing more, but I knew less. But because I knew someone who had been seasoned in that field, he knew more and was doing more. But I was doing more and I knew less. So what have I been talking about? I've been talking about knowing and doing in one of four ways. The first one is doing to the point to which you know. The second one is knowing more and doing less. And the third one is knowing more and doing more. And the last one is doing more and knowing less. Okay, before I go, if the Perception Podcast have been of immense value to you, if the Perception Podcast actually have been of immense value to you, I would like you to support this podcast. I will include the link in the show notes. And I hope you enjoy this podcast. Have a lovely day. Thank you.